Fine. So today's topic for object-oriented system design is deployment diagram. We are going to cover this topic under the topic of UML diagrams. We have done so many diagrams which are falling under two categories, structural or behavioral. So first thing is deployment diagram falls under the category of structural diagram. That means it is static in nature. Right. Now, first of all, let me tell you, and you must be knowing what actually deployment means. Deployment means that what you are going to do, you are going to deploy the software components at the place of the client or where the hardware is residing. So that particular is called as the deployment diagram, and on the same concept, you can understand what actually deployment diagram is. Focusing on more to the deployment diagram, I'm just going to give you the basic concepts of deployment diagram. First thing, deployment diagrams are used describing the hardware components and software components where software components are deployed. That means whatever software you have designed or developed, you are going to, install or going to define that particular software components at the place of the hardware components. That particular process is called as the deployment. Now deployment diagram shows how they are deployed in the hardware. Now when I say they, I mean to say the software components, right? The software components. So software components diagram, this particular diagram, deployment diagram, is going to help you to show how these particular software components are being deployed in hardware. Next point, these are special diagrams used to focus on software and hardware components. So this particular diagram is going to focus on both the things, that is the software and the hardware components. Deployment diagrams are made to focus on hardware topology of a system. That means, as we know that software is need to be deployed on the hardware, in the hardware, so we need to understand the hardware topology, and that is the focus point of what? That is the focus point of deployment diagram, right, for a particular system. And let's understand who is going to use or who is going to make benefit of this particular diagram, deployment diagram. The system engineers are the ones who are going to use this particular diagram. So system engineers के लिए ये diagram बहुत helpful होता है, and they are the ones who are going to use it, system engineers. All right, now let's say what is the purpose, actual purpose of deployment diagram. The purpose is, first of all, to show the structure of the runtime system. That means it will give you a complete overview of how the system will have the structure defined or all the components organized when the system is in running condition or is when it is in processing condition. So that particular structure can be shown with the help of this particular deployment diagram. Example, let's see if you have a client server system. So in that particular client server system, we need to understand that if a program is running on the hardware, on the server, the client needs to send a request to the server, and then server is going to respond to the client. So that particular structure, then if we see the internet, so that particular defining of structure during the runtime process is given as the deployment diagram. Now second point, they capture the hardware that will be used to implement the system, the links between different items of the hardware. So what is this going to do? It is going to capture all the hardware components, the implementation, how the system is being implemented, and all the links which are going to be defined between the hardwares, how the two hardware systems communicating to each other. That is the point. They model physical hardware elements and the communication paths between them. Example, if I take the example of internet also. So what it is, it can be seen that if my desktop is a client, the client is seen, then it is going to have a connection through a modem, and that particular modem will give me the connectivity to the internet server, and then that particular process will take place. So this particular are to be defined as the hardware elements, and a communication path is being defined between these particular elements, hardware elements. So this is how the deployment diagram defines. Next point, they can be used to plan the architecture of a system. One more thing, it is very important, if you want to define the architecture of a system, even before developing that particular system, you can design the architecture part and you can plan the architecture with the help of this deployment diagram. So whenever you are defining the synopsis of a particular project you are working on, you can give the deployment diagram as this architecture of a system, which can give a clear understanding to the client that how the system will be structured when it is in the runtime state. Okay, now the last thing is they are also useful for document the deployment of software components or nodes. That means if we need to document all the software components which are being defined in this diagram, can use this particular diagram. Now, let's understand where can we use this deployment diagram actually. So basic concept is the same, which is being defined as the purpose of the deployment diagram. So all the points which are defined here are the ones which are coming through the purpose only. So it's easy to understand. Deployment diagram can be used whenever we want to model the hardware topology of a system. So if you want to define or model the hardware topology of a system, you can use the deployment diagram. You can also use it to model the embedded systems. You can also use this to give the hardware details of the distributed applications, client server systems, and whenever you are working or whenever you are doing the forward and reverse engineering, as I told you that you can define it as the architecture for a particular system. So whenever you are doing the forward or reverse engineering, you can use this particular diagram. So basic components are modeling the hardware topology for embedded system, for client server system, and for distributed application, with two concepts, either forward or reverse engineering. Now, whenever we have done any type of diagram, we should have always understood what all notations we are going to use, because notations are the concept with the help of which we are going to draw the diagram. So for deployment diagram, the notations we are going to use are not too many. It is simple. First one is termed to be as the nodes, and second one as the dependency. Okay, so basically what is a node? Node is just a hardware or a software component which is being shown in the system. So how to define the node? Define is any hardware or software component defined in the system. Okay, how do we render this? We render it with the help of a 3D box. Okay, so I'll just show you how this is rendered. This is rendered with the help of this 3D box. So this 3D box is defined to be a type of node. Okay, so all these are what? All these are nodes. Now, other hardware node can be signified with stereotypes. These particular nodes can be defined with the help of stereotypes. We have already understood in the earlier lectures also what is stereotype. Now you can also give the connection between the nodes and are represented with a line with optional stereotype. Now this particular connection between nodes can be shown as the communication or the dependency between the two nodes. So that is what dependency is. Nodes can reside within a node. That means you can have a nested node. All right, and in the term of dependency means to say that you can have a relationship between the two nodes. That particular relation can be defined as the association relationship. So these are the basic notations that you have to remember, and this dependency can be defined with the help of a line, okay, with the arrow. Now let's understand how we can draw a deployment diagram. So first thing is you have to identify what are the nodes you are going to define for the particular system you are going to draw the deployment diagram. Then second thing, you are going to define the relationship among those nodes. So there is nothing much in it. The only thing is you are going to define, you are going to identify the nodes as we did it in the packages. And here you are going to define it in the nodes. What are nodes? Nodes are the either software or the hardware elements or components. So that particular can be defined as a node, hardware or a software component. Okay, and this is rendered as a 3D box. All right, then second thing is relationship among nodes. That means when the two nodes are communicating with each other or showing any type of relationship among them as association or any other type, so that particular is done with the help of a line, and which defines the relationship among the two hardware components or the software components, how they are communicating with each other. Now, let's see how a deployment diagram looks like at a glance. See, this is a deployment diagram in which we have shown the internet access by the server and the client. So this is internet, this is modem. So what are these? These are the 3D boxes which are defined as the node. Okay, all these 3D boxes are defined as the nodes. Basically, these are either a software component or a hardware component, which is being defined as the architecture for a particular system. So this is, then second thing is you can see the lines which are connecting between the two nodes. These are called as the association or the dependencies. That means the relationship between the two nodes, how they are communicating to each other. So basically you can see here that there are these are the servers. This is a local network, this is caching server, and you have a modem for bank, and you have a internet. This is how you are going to access the internet through the LAN. So this defines what? This defines as the deployment diagram. This defines as the architecture, how the system is going to look like at the runtime situation. All right, so these are the basic notations we are going to use. One as the rectangle, 3D rectangle, and second one as the line. Now let's see how in order management system, we have taken an example of order management system. Order management system, in this we have, we can have a, this is the architecture of actually the order management system. This is a user is going to use a desktop. Through desktop, he is going to have a connection which is going to define with the modem. The communication will take place with the modem, and it will connect you to the internet, and internet is going to have a cache server which is finally connected to the server. So whatever request is being sent through the user, it will be taken out from the internet, the server nodes. So all these are what? These can be, see, this is how we can define it as, we can define all these particular as 3D rectangles, and we can name them as server 1, server 2. Here we have rendered it in the form of the graphical form, but here in this deployment diagram, you can render it in the terms of these particular all types of rectangles, 3D rectangles. So this can be shown as rectangle, rectangle, rectangle. This is processor, the caching server, and this is the internet. Again, you can show it in a rectangular box. Then modem, again rectangular box, connection shown be as dependency, then a desktop and the user. So these are what, this is showing you the architecture of a order management system, which is very helpful to show the client that this will be a look-alike feel of the runtime system. So these are very helpful. Now, see what order management system has. First thing, how do we find out that what are the nodes? The first step is find out what all nodes we are going to need. So what are the nodes? We have monitor as a node, modem as a node, and caching servers as a node, and lastly the server as a node. So these particular are defined as the node, and we can say that this particular application is termed to be as a web-based application because internet is being processed. So web-based application in which we have a cluster environment. You can see this particular as a cluster environment, and these particular servers are working as the cluster server 1, server 2, and server 3. The users connect to the application using the internet. Fine. So this is how the order management system has been defined. So that's all for today's lecture. Thank you very much.